Hey guys, Simon here and welcome back to the Aether Hub for more Magic the Gathering lore. Today we're continuing our story about the history of Dominaria, the last such chapter before we start the official story arc of our return to Dominaria. But before we continue, let's quickly go over what happened in our previous video. Last time we covered the story of Karona, the living avatar of Dominaria's mana, also known as the False God. Karona was formed when Kamal, a former pit fighter, killed Phase the Untouchable along with Akroma and another woman named Zagorka. This being of unimaginable power took to the multiverse to find her purpose in life, and unfortunately the experiences brought by that search had driven her insane. When she returned to Dominaria, Karona sought to conquer the land of Oteria, but was ultimately betrayed and killed using the Mirari sword. Her death released Jessica from this fusion and ignited her spark, but more importantly, it caused irreversible damage to Dominaria itself, leaving the plane torn asunder by time rifts. We pick up our story with the planeswalker Teferi returning to Dominaria after centuries of traveling across the multiverse. The purpose of his return was to phase in Shiv and his home continent of Zulfur, two countries he had phased out to protect them during the Phyrexian invasion. Upon his return, Teferi found a different Dominaria from the one he had left. The plane was twisted by various time rifts, and its mana was going crazy. The planeswalker knew that something had to be done, so along with Jahora and a small band of other mortals, he traveled the plane in search of answers. During their travels, the group encountered two potential planeswalkers, Radha of Keld and Venzer of Urbog. Teferi took little interest in Venzer, a frightened and weak man, but he believed Radha had an untapped power that could be the key behind sealing the time rifts. In reality, this was just Teferi once again running away from his responsibilities, afraid to face the dire consequences of his own actions. When he phased out Shiv, he did it with the noblest of intentions, to protect Jorah's home and her people, and now he refused to accept the reality of the situation, that this phasing could cause the very destruction of Dominaria. If you're interested in more details about how and why the plane is being threatened by the phasing of Shiv, I've already covered the entire story of Time Spiral, and you can find that video linked in the description below. Teferi would eventually seal the time rift created above Shiv and phase it back in at the cost of losing his own planeswalker spark. At this point in time, we thought that this loss was permanent, but as it turns out, Teferi will eventually somehow manage to regain it. The most important thing to take from this is that either the loss of a spark or the loss of a life is what it takes to seal a time rift, and many planeswalkers ended up dying in the effort to seal them. The remaining time rifts on Dominaria would end up sealed by other planeswalkers. The planeswalker Freyalise, who took on the mantle of Protector of Skyshroud after the Phyrexian invasion, found her home invaded by the same Phyrexian horrors that invaded Dominaria in the past. They came through the time rift, and if left unchallenged, they could decimate all of life in Skyshroud. Lucky for her, the Phyrexians weren't the only force in Skyshroud. There was another collective, you might say, living in the Great Forest. Yes, I'm talking about slivers. Freyalise used the slivers to combat the Phyrexian threat, but ultimately, she couldn't defeat them. While she decidedly won a siege here and there, so long as the time rift above Skyshroud was open, the Phyrexians would return. In the end, she gave up her own life to seal the time rift, ending the Phyrexian invasion of Skyshroud and Dominaria as a whole. What's more terrifying than Phyrexians coming through a time rift in Skyshroud? Phyrexians coming through a time rift in Urbog, of course. Urbog at the time was under the protection of Lord Windgrace, another planeswalker that fought Phyrexia during Yawgmoth's invasion. His duty was to make sure that the Phyrexians never returned, but unfortunately, and quite obviously, he failed in that mission. Under control of a being known as the Weaver King, countless waves of Phyrexians that emerged from the time rifts would form an invasion army big enough to overtake Urbog. Just like Freyalise, Lord Windgrace sacrificed himself to seal away the time rift above Urbog, but not before infusing himself with the very land itself, claiming that he would always remain its protector. The next time rift that was sealed was a very large one over Teleria. This one was the biggest of them all, and it fell upon Karn to seal it. The issue here was obviously its size. Karn couldn't hope to seal it by himself through traditional means, so he went through time just minutes before Baron, an archmage who formed the Tolarian Academy along with Urza, had obliterated the island that hosted the academy, of course in another mad effort to defeat the Phyrexians. This obliteration was what caused the damage which eventually allowed the time rift to grow, so Karn had to seal it away before the deed was even done. Succeeding in that effort, Karn survived this ordeal but ended up being corrupted by Phyrexian oil. Afraid of the danger that he might become, Karn left for Mirrodin, where he would remain as the de facto leader of New Phyrexia, the father of machines. That is, until Venser eventually saves him during the events of Mirrodin / the New Phyrexia War. The rift above Madara was sealed by Nicol Bolas. After the Elder Dragon was revived, Lezrek returned to Dominaria seeking a way to kill him. He's given a copy of the Night Mask by the entity herself, which has the power to drain black mana from others. The two legendary planeswalkers engaged in battle, and Lezrek used the mask as his opening move to drain the black mana from Bolas. The two fought for a while, with neither having the upper hand, until Lezrek destroyed the Talon Gates, Bolas' most prized possession, enraging the Elder Dragon and causing it to become reckless. Afterwards, he uses Phase's corrosive touch to make parts of the dragon's body decay and fall off. Bolas takes to the multiverse in an attempt to flee for his life, but Lezrek pursues him, following his trail. The two would wind up on Madara, where Bolas is on death's door. Lezrek gloats as he is preparing to deal the finishing blow, but suddenly, and seemingly out of nowhere, the dragon impales him with his tail. Bolas reveals that he was just fooling with Lezrek the entire time, presumably out of pure boredom. You see, the dragon had already defeated Knight's Reach before engaging the Planeswalker, and claimed the original mask for himself, making Bolas immune to that copy's effect. He then uses Lezrek's spark to seal the rift above Madara, killing him and planeswalks away, presumably to Amonkhet to set his plans in motion. The remaining rifts were sealed by Jeska, who, like many others, ended up dying afterwards. As the result of sealing the final rift, the Mending had occurred, changing the very nature of the Planeswalker spark forever. Teferi then returns to Jamora to help his people rebuild. Johora seeks out Joda, who is still alive somewhere. Radha never actually ascends to a Planeswalker, but becomes the War Chief of Keld, and Venser planeswalks into the unknown, but his story we already know. And that, you guys, is the most up-to-date history on the plane of Dominaria. So we now begin the actual storyline to our return of Dominaria, in which I hope we get a lot of callback to the stories of the past. Hopefully these videos were informative and helps build a little understanding of this ancient plane before we get into new lore. And if you've missed any of the parts of this series, you can find them linked in the description below. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe for more, and of course share it across the multiverse. You can also support the channel and get some free cards by supporting me on Patreon. Join the Vorthos army by checking the link in the description below. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching. I'm Simon and I'll see you again next time here on the Aether Hub.